Hi traders, and welcome to the Technical Analysis Market Wrap on Friday the 25th of March. So we've seen some good movement again this week. As we anticipated last week, once the options were all closed, we saw some good breakouts on a couple of the key markets. So we'll jump into the charts and see what we can identify for today's trading and early into next week. All right, we'll start out here with the Aussie USD. You can see it's gone from strength to strength. This is a daily chart now. The Friday was around this area here, and yeah, once the options were all closed that we talked about on the Friday, you can see that we had a really big breakout, and all the way up to the 75-cent mark. Now, yeah, this comes to a very interesting level. Now, obviously, we've got pretty strong resistance at the 75 cents. I'll pop the line here and then we'll take it out to a weekly to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. And you can see here, it's a very strong point of resistance way, the middle towards the end of 2021. Had a long stint here. This is the weekly chart, so we're talking about nearly 3 weeks worth of action at this point. And again here we had a month of action around this level here, support there. So we know the 75 is very strong, but yeah, the weekly double bottom has played out now. So you can see here, this is the double bottom that we're talking about, the one that started at the 69.80 area, a very strong point of support and a very obvious place for a double bottom really. And there's your neckline, and now this pattern has fulfilled its basically potential. You can see here, this is a neckline right through this part here. That distance there is replicated and all the way to the 75. So look, it's definitely hit that point now where you're going to have to start wondering how far it can go before a pullback. It's had a really big run on the daily. As you can see, we've had, basically 3 days of very strong buying in a row. Even though I tried to sell off a little bit down here, you can see it's pushed up, but we're already starting to see that bit of weakness throughout the end of this period. So we go down to a smaller time frame, and you can see the 4 hour has been tracking up quite nicely. Really good buy zone down there. On the 1 hour, once again, once it broke out of that little channel, it gave you a few opportunities to get in. It's been a pretty good trade. What we're looking for now is either a break of the 75, or we want to see it sell off to 75 and start to make a series of lower highs and lower lows, which is probably the preferred trade now. I think it's the easier one because, going up past 75 cents without a pullback is going to be, it's going to be precarious for it really. So what we're looking for, the easy trade would be a bit of a reversal around this level here and pull it back down to the 74-cent mark. So all we're looking for here is a series of lower highs and lower lows on a 1 hour. I wouldn't go any lower than a 1 hour for this particular trade. And if we get that, then we can see that we will be able to aim for this level here, which is around that 74.15 mark. Pretty good scalping really. It's a pretty tight stop loss because you only have to go to the recent high, and it's probably a 2 or 3 to 1 trade. Failing that, if it does break above the 75.20 mark and consolidates above there, then we look for another lower high, higher low, and wait for the 20 to catch up, and then we start buying off that level. But yeah, the preferred trade is the short. But again, if it closes on a daily above the 75.20, then we start looking for the longs from that point. But I'd be keeping them fairly short because the pullback is pretty much imminent. You can see that we're long away from the 20 moving average now, so we're going to be looking at a pullback to that at some point. This is the level, if it's going to, that you're probably going to find and expect that to happen. So it might push up a little bit more past the 75, but really the ideal trade is to actually look for the shorting opportunities. All right, we'll go to the US dollar CAD now. Now this one, look, it eventually got there. Look, it was always promising to the 125.15 area that we had marked out. It was trying to hold up for quite some time throughout this period. You can see that the bulls were trying to kick it up, but the sellers won the war basically on every candle, and they eventually got what they wanted. And it did get down to that very strong support around that 125.14. Again, this is another case of very big expansion from the 20 moving average. When this does happen, we are generally looking for that bit of a pullback, especially at a level of very strong support. You can see back here at the start of the year that we had 5 or 6 very big rejection days in a row when it did break past the 125. So you've really got to pay attention to that. The 200 was supporting it though at that point there. The 200 is nowhere near it now. So we have to be very mindful that there is one level of support that is missing this time around. But at the same time, this was a strong support level right through this point here. And if you take it out to the bigger time frames, again, you can see how strong this level is. So very strong support. And it has reached it now, so the short has definitely finished its movement. But what we're looking for now is, again, probably the opposite to the Aussie. We're probably looking for a bit of a bounce off this level. So we need to go to the smaller time frames, of course, and we can see that we even though the 1 hour was tracking quite solid down here, it certainly has started to slow down here. And although we got one big push down, you know, now we're going to see ourselves in this level between the 20 moving average and that support zone. What I'd be looking for here is a change of trend on the 1 hour, so a series of higher highs and higher lows. That's all it would take. Break all of this noise right through here, and then we start targeting the 126, probably 20 in the first instance, and probably all of the zones that we've basically tested on the way down, on the way up. So I'd be keeping this one to a pretty good scalp though as well. This is definitely a scalping trade. If of course it breaks the 125 on the daily and closes below it, then we start looking to go shorter again, but I'd be waiting probably for a retrace of that level. If it breaks the 125 on the way down, I'd be waiting for it to come up and test the 125 from below before I'd be interested in the shorts. I think the longs are a little bit more enticing at this level because of the strong support that's there. All right, the star of the show has been the US dollar yen. Look, this was the one that was threatening to break out, and break out it did, even though, you know, it's had a very, very strong week, as you can see. Like, this is where we were when we were talking about it last week, waiting basically for the witching hour to finish. And of course, once it did, Monday picked up and off it went. We had a massive week, big, you know, we're talking about 400 or 500 pips nearly of movement. It's broken two very, very key resistance points. These resistance points have been there for a very long time. You've got to go to a monthly actually to see and appreciate where they were. And it's broken both of them straight through like it was nothing. So, you know, that sometimes does worry me a little bit, because it makes it difficult to trade. It's been such a big move. Now it makes it very, very difficult to actually trade. I would be waiting for a retrace from the bottom now. Very difficult to get involved in the long if you haven't already. I mean, realistically, your take profits should have been, even though it has gone on, your take profits were at this level here. If you stayed in and left some on, well, that's okay as well. But yeah, realistically, you know, you should have been able to catch a big portion of this move. What I would be waiting for now is definitely a reversal back to the 121, probably 50 at the very, very least, but probably more to the 121. If it gets around this level here and does a small change of trend, so a series of higher highs and higher lows on a smaller time frame after the pullback, then I'd be looking at targeting these highs again and looking for the long trade up from there. Of course, if it breaks down and closes below the 121 on a daily, then we start looking back to around that 119, which is obviously a strong area as well. So difficult to go along on this one now if you haven't already done it, but the shorts are a little bit more lucrative on it, but it is a bit of a wait and see. I wouldn't be shorting it from this level here. I'd be waiting for it to actually come back down to the 121, then look for long opportunities at a change of trend, or if we get a daily close below the 121, then we start looking for the shorts. But even then, you got to trade it with a bit of caution because this has got extraordinary strength at the moment. All right, dollar index is the next one we'll have a look at. This one's had a it's been a pretty strong week to it, really. It's had a bit of resistance at this point here. You can see these two candles both kicked off the 98.80 area, which we know is a pretty strong level. But it has bounced off the 20 moving average all week, really, and it's basically been on an upward trajectory, which is pretty good. Bodes pretty negatively for the euro, of course, but we'll have a look at that in a second. It is a level of resistance. We know that it's broken through there. It doesn't thrill me that this one failed, like I said to you last week. It has touched the 20 though, and it's done exactly what you would expect it to do. I don't really like it as much from here. I think that it's probably going to struggle a little bit to get past the 98.80 this time, simply because it failed on the previous high. So although it has tracked up there, it's tracked up there relatively slowly. So yeah, when you look at it compared to, say, something like the US dollar yen, this hasn't had anywhere near the same move. So realistically, it is struggling a little bit at this point here. It's going to be a pretty easy trade, this one. If it breaks up above the 98.80 and closes on a daily above there, then we start targeting the 99.30s again, which is fine. But it has to do that. I wouldn't touch it until it does. If we see any sign of weakness and we see a change of trend, you can see here how hard this level has been to break through. If we see a change of trend and a roll reversal down to a series of lower highs and lower lows, then we start shorting it again, and I start thinking that we're probably going to be targeting the lows at around that 97.80 in the first instance, and then failing that, probably down to the low 97s again. So pretty easy trade again, really just one to watch. You can't do anything with it just yet, but if it does lower high and lower low on a smaller time frame from here, sell it down, and if it daily close above the 98.80, then we start targeting the upward boundary of the 99.40 and 30 levels again. Of course, the euro is the one that is going to be the easiest one to trade in that instance. Everything that I've just said, effectively in reverse. You can see that although it's been a relatively quiet week. You can see it has sold off a little bit, but not much. And all of the sell-offs have been pushed up by the buyers. So you can see that each of these last three candles especially have, ended really with the buyers probably taking more control than the sellers. They've tried to push it down, and the buyers have actually pulled up and picked up a lot more momentum. So always good to be careful of that, because it's really telling you the signs that, the momentum is actually more, the buyers aren't letting this one go. They're not just going to let the sellers have their way with them. You can see the signal lines out of the MACD well and truly on the daily. So I would be probably expecting the exact same opposite on the DX trade as we are on here. If we get a close above the 20 moving average, we start to long, and the first target is the 112.50, which is this resistance zone here. But of course, if we do see any more weakness and we get to see that close, what we want is basically a daily close below these levels. If we get that below these levels here, then we start to look for the shorts, and the easiest short is going to be down to the 108, which is the previous zone that it reached. So a close above the 20 moving average, we start targeting the 112.50, a close below the 109.50, and we start targeting the 108. So pretty straightforward trading on the euro. All right, the S&P 500 is the one that everybody's talking about, and this finds itself, it's had a very, very big day, as you can see. This week's been an interesting week. Look, it launched on the Monday after the quadruples, hit the 200, then had a very interesting candle there, tried to sell off, but the buyers picked up. Then the buyers took it all the way to the resistance level. Sellers basically kicked in, reversed it all, and the buyers in this last session has basically pushed it all the way up to this level again. The 45.30 level is a very, very strong level. You can see that there. It's a roll reversal, recent roll reversal as well. Very, very strong resistance there, strong support, and you can see it's interacted quite heavily here, and we find ourselves at the exact same place. Now, this is one of those ones, MACD's gone positive. If it breaks above here, again, I think this is a pretty easy trade in the sense that you just have to wait for it to actually close in one direction or another. If we get a daily close above the 45.40, we start targeting the highs through this level here around the 47. I think that we could probably see a bit of a rally up to the throughout April. It wouldn't surprise me at all. We've got earnings season starting in about 4 or 5 weeks in the US, so quite often we're going to see a bit of a lead into that. So that's probably the target, but we need to see a close above the 45.30 first. If we get a daily close above here, then we start targeting these levels around the 47 to 47.20. Failing that, of course, if we see a big reversal and it sells off from this point onwards, I wouldn't be selling this though until it actually comes and closes below the 44.50. If we don't get a close daily below the 44.50, I wouldn't be really wanting to get involved in the short, because there's still a fair bit of momentum pushing up at this level. If it does close below there though, the logical targets are going to be 42.70 again, and in the shorter term 43.90. So pretty easy trading on this one, but you just have to really wait for a daily close in either direction to give us the clue as to where the momentum is going to shift. So look, it's been some really good trading this week. I think a lot of the majors that we talked about last week have certainly done what we wanted them to do. They broke their levels and continued on with the job. So hopefully you're able to take part in that. And I'm sure we're going to see probably a bit of a continuation throughout today and early next week. But we've got to wait for these key levels to break now, because they have been reached throughout this week. Hope everyone's had a great week's trading. Have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.